of a fluid is a measure of its resistance to gradual changes in shape by shear stress or tensile stress. Cohesion, or cohesive force, is a property of molecules of the same type to be attracted to each other.
A fluid with a high viscosity will also have high cohesive forces. On the opposite end of the spectrum, if a fluid has low viscosity, the cohesive forces will be weak.
Hey guys, Stu here. So I'm going to be telling you about the two different kinds of viscosity. So you have dynamic viscosity and kinematic viscosity. Dynamic viscosity is a process that relates shearing stress to fluid motion. When you talk about dynamic viscosity, you have two different kinds of fluids. You have a shear thinning fluid and a shear thickening fluid. In shear thinning fluids, apparent viscosity decreases with increasing shear rate. Or in other words, the harder a fluid is sheared, the less viscous it becomes. Now to put this in terms you can understand, think about latex paint on a paintbrush. If you dip the paintbrush in the paint and you hold the brush up in the air, the fluid doesn't drip because it's not being sheared and it has a high viscosity. But when you put the paint on the wall from the paintbrush, then you notice that the paint applies to the wall more smoothly. That's because the fluid is being sheared at a high rate, so it becomes less viscous. With shear thickening fluids, apparent viscosity increases with increasing shear rate. That is, the harder the fluid is sheared, the more viscous it becomes. When you talk about this, you can think about quicksand. When you're stuck in quicksand and you try to quickly pull somebody out, it's going to be harder to get them out. That's because the fluid is being sheared at a high rate, so the quicksands are going to become more viscous as you try to pull that person out. Now moving on to kinematic viscosity, that's the viscosity that's defined as the ratio of the absolute viscosity to the fluid density. This is the more common type of viscosity that's discussed when you talk about viscosity. And
during the viscosity test, we are using hand soap that's pink, water, lotion that's white, and hand sanitizer that's green. It is expected that the least viscous fluid will fall the fastest down the slanted surface. The least viscous fluid was water. In order from least viscous to most viscous, it was water, hand soap, and hand sanitizer, with the most viscous being lotion.
It's covering it.
Yeah.